Hi, this is part 1 in a series of videos that will take you through the design of a 9.5-month training program. In this case, the athlete is me and the race is Melbourne 70.3, a half Ironman Triathlon on the 14th of November 2021. Today's video will show the steps I use to create the plan outline. Upcoming videos will demonstrate how I schedule the sessions. I'll be using a spreadsheet to demonstrate building a new plan from scratch. I begin with the date I'm going to start the training program. Add in the days of the week. Add in the times of the day. And then start extending it to the race day. Now I'll just freeze the row that has the headings. Now I'll move to the end of the program and work backwards. So first we'll have 2 weeks of taper. So I'll just colour that in a slightly different colour. Then we want 3 weeks active and 1 week recovery. So we'll continue that back out throughout the program. Now I happen to know that this particular week here I won't be able to train, so I'll make a slight variation, and there's only a 2-week block just so it lines up with my availability to train. And as it turns out, we find out that we start the training program on a recovery week. Not the worst thing to happen. So now we have a grid with dates, recovery weeks and taper all mapped out. Next step is to identify the training phases for each block. You don't have to use the same phases as me, but it's important to know each week's phase when deciding what session to schedule. Moving back to the race date, I like to have 2 blocks of what I call race prep. We'll colour these in magenta. These will be my biggest training weeks. More volume but less intensity. More race specific, so race pace efforts rather than threshold or VO2 max. This is a phase where I become fully switched on. I usually abstain from alcohol and bad food during this phase. I like to precede race prep with a block I refer to as transition. We'll use blue for this block. Sessions are similar to race prep, but the amount of training isn't quite as much, and I don't need to be fully switched on, like a warm-up before we get serious. I now jump to the top of the program and start working back down. A light red will identify the base training blocks. A long base training phase can be used to improve your aerobic efficiency, but on this occasion I'm going to settle for just 2 blocks. Most of the sessions will be at an aerobic intensity. My main aim is to ease my body back into triathlon training with the least risk of injury. I also need to get used to the early morning training sessions again. Next we have early quality. This is gradually introducing intensity back into the sessions. Short efforts, lots of recovery. Typically one of the shortest phases, this fits in well with the short 2-week block. That leaves us with 3 weeks for quality and strength. If there weren't enough weeks here, I would have taken a block from early quality. This phase has more sessions with intensity. Hill repeats, threshold efforts, fartleks, all the fun stuff. To enable recovery from the intensity, we won't have big training weeks. This phase is about quality over quantity. Remember that these phases are designed for my training for this event. You might prefer to have a phase with swim focus, or maintain a higher training load for a longer part of the program. Or maybe you need to condense everything into 5 or 6 months. The important thing is to identify what phases you want and when each one starts and stops. I recommend having at least a few races before your goal event. We'll call these warm-up or B races. Testing out your pre-race breakfast, your morning routine, experiencing those pre-race nerves. All this will help you when your main event arrives. As race dates are generally fixed, we'll place these first and then schedule the other training sessions around them. We will start with the half Ironman Triathlon Melbourne 70.3. It's way too early for the local sprint triathlon calendar to be published, but I always like to do a sprint triathlon the week before a half Ironman, so I'll pencil one here in hope. Likewise with the winter duathlon calendar, but I would love to do a sprint duathlon just before the start of the final race prep phase. Fingers crossed one is scheduled on this date. Over winter, I prefer to compete in trail running races, more suited to the cold and wet, something different to keep me fresh. And unlike a 10k or half marathon on the road, races on the trails are typically quite technical and extremely hilly. Removes the pressure of trying to achieve a particular time. Rapid Ascent have 5 races in their trail running series. Races 4 and 5 don't suit my program, but the first 3 races fit in quite nicely. You may have noticed I like to schedule my lesser races the Sunday before a recovery week. I don't taper for these events, but get a good recovery with the smaller training load the week after. Unfortunately, Race 1 at Yarra Bend doesn't fit in perfectly. Rather than try and rework my recovery weeks, I'll just race a shorter distance at Yarra Bend, which is probably a good idea for an early race anyway. I've added in an April trail running race at Maroondah Dam. I won't be in particularly good condition for this event, but knowing I cannot train much the week after, I'll feel better if I know I'm recovering from a race. I've left the question mark on this event. I'll make a final decision closer to the date. I think this is long enough for part 1. Next video we'll schedule the long runs and add in the anchor sessions. If you enjoyed the video, please hit like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. See ya.